And two people of the same sex cannot reproduce in the human species. It can't happen. It cannot happen. But we're drawing a square and we're saying it's a triangle. It's okay. This leads into the contraception. Like I said, what organ do we keep from functioning? Oftentimes people, if you listen to the interviews, especially about Islam, and they say, I'm so worried because this country, Islam is spreading. There are so many Muslims in this country. And when people say that they're worried that the Muslims are going to take over this country, I want to say to them, how many children do you have? 1.5? How many children could you have? Because for some, they had one, that's all they can have. That's great. But to say to someone, no, we had one child because we don't want any more, we can't afford any more, come on. You know there were families during the Great Depression that had 14 kids. And they were eating porridge or some other kind of stuff they made, and they lived through it. They lived through it. I know families now who have numerous children, and maybe only one of the parents is working outside the home, and they make it work. Even my sister, and she has 7 kids. And I'll say to my friend, my best friend in the whole world, if you're watching this, you are my best friend in the whole world, just so you know. I told him my sister was having her 5th, and he said, oh my gosh, what is she doing? And I would say, hallelujah, but it's Lent, but that's what I say. I'm so happy about it. I mean, think about this. So people will say, oh, I'm so worried. Why are these Muslims? Why is it that, the religion is spreading? It's not spreading, but they're having 10, 12 children. They're not using birth control. They're having children. And I'll guarantee you this, later on in life, they're going to have children to take care of them. It's part of the culture. It's part of a lot of the cultures, but not always the American culture. Greed would say to us, no, I want to live a little, I want to do this and that and the other thing. Well, that's fine. You can be responsible. There's something called natural family planning. This is not the rhythm method. It's very scientific. And it actually works. It's very accurate. It can work. But we have to be open to life. And again, Jesus didn't preach on this. Why? Because nobody had the audacity to ask. Can you imagine God is coming down to our level and saying, I am sharing my gift of creation with you? And we say, well, we don't want that. Just the pleasure, please. We don't want the responsibility. I get that. Okay, you're going to entrust the soul to us, that's fine, but we don't want it. We don't want it. Can you imagine someone approaching Jesus like that? So again, on a logical level, because not everybody believes in Jesus, not everybody believes in God. Let's go scientific again, purely scientific. Aliens land on the earth. Now don't go out and tell people I believe in aliens, okay? I'll get a bunch of people following me around everywhere. Aliens land on Earth. They would stay here about an hour. They'd go back in their ship and they'd say, let's come back in 100 years because they're going to destroy themselves. And we can take over the planet. Why would they say this? They would say, scientifically, we're studying these creatures who are animals, and they kind of sanction these unions between the same sex. And there's no possibility of reproduction. They use contraception, so they're limiting their fitness. They don't have a lot of offspring. So what are the odds? And they even kill their children in the womb. And most of these children aren't even handicapped or abnormal or anything else. It doesn't make sense. These people scientifically do not make sense because they're not worried about their fitness. They're not worried about evolutionary competitiveness. So let's leave here, we'll come back in a year, or 100 years. They'll all be gone. Probably except for the Amish. The Amish will still be here, somehow. But everybody else will be gone. It's true, on a very basic level. So what about these other things? We're talking about these beginning of life issues and stuff. In vitro fertilization. So when we start messing with the reproductive things, we have to be very careful. There's a story about 3 scientists. The one scientist could take dirt and soil and make bones. The other one, if he had bones, he could make sinews and muscles. The other one, if he had muscles, he could put on skin, fur, and nails. So the three guys get together, and they say, let's make something. And the one says, why? And the other two say, because we can. Let's make something because we can. So they do. The guy makes a skeleton out of the soil. The other one puts musculature on it and sinews. Finally, the last puts fur and teeth and claws. And it looks like a big lion. And the lion lets out this loud roar, and it eats the three scientists. And then runs off in the jungle. We have to be very careful. We have to be very careful that our scientific experiments, that our creations, that our miracles do not consume us. It is a very slippery slope. And so basic biology, sperm has half the information, egg has the other half, they go together, conception occurs, it's one person, that is a person. Where people cannot get pregnant, where they come off as infertile, they will oftentimes go to a fertility clinic. My sister did this. The day she was going, I called her on the phone to say, what's up? And she said, oh, I'm going to the fertility clinic. We've been trying for 10 years. We're going to, what? You know, pull the car over. She had no clue what happened there. So this is what happens, just so you know. They are going to artificially make this process happen. Half the information is in the egg. So let's say they take 10 eggs. They're going to fertilize them with 10 sperm. No room for flaws or anything. They're going to make sure this happens. They will take the best 3 of those, let's say, the most viable. They will implant them in the female. The 7 that didn't make it, they will either throw them away, they will harvest them for embryonic stem cells, or they will put them in a deep freeze. Right now in this country, I think we have about 650,000 of these in a deep freeze. It's not an egg, it's not a sperm, it is a person. Remember, half the information makes a whole. That is a person. If those persons are not killed, if those persons are not harvested for their parts, they are put in deep freeze. The 3 of these are implanted in the female. Whichever one is going to be the most viable is left. The other 2 are withdrawn, and the same fate happens to them. And who knows about this one? And so they will say, well, a baby was born through this. You can never pursue a good through an evil means. You can never use a person as a means to an end. A person is always a subject, never an object. We cannot do that. So when my sister heard this, aside from being horrified, she said she would only have 3 fertilized and 3 implanted. Now my sister weighed about 98 pounds, okay? But she was going to do this. And she went there, and they really didn't check her out too much or anything. They did with the 3 implants they never took. They just never divided. $14,000 later, she's still not pregnant. So I introduced her to someone I had met in an old church, Dr. Stegman. And when she met Dr. Stegman, he pretty much did an external exam, said, you have endometriosis. And he opened her up, and she was so messed up inside she could have never gotten pregnant. So he fixed her up, and he said, wait a year and try again. Meanwhile, I was down at Mexico, and I was at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I offered Mass for my sister and her husband. She had been going to Mass and confession for weeks before that, but none of us knew it. She called me a month after that, and she said, thank you for introducing me to Dr. Stegman. I'm pregnant. And then she called a month later, and she said, it's twins. And I stopped taking her calls after that. And we have Lily and Rose, 2 beautiful, beautiful babies through a miracle of God and the help of the doctors. Many people still don't know this. They still go to the clinic. They don't know because they'll say, yes, we'll fertilize 10 placental units. We'll fertilize 10 embryos. An embryo doesn't sound like a person to me. Probably not to most people. We cannot do this in vitro fertilization. And again, remember the voice of the devil. Oh, you deserve it. You have a right to be a parent, etc., etc. We can't do it. We just can't do it. We're talking about this new the Health and Human Services thing. And I just want to kind of close with this. You know, with this act, it's not only about contraception, because it's not going to stop there. What they said is contraception is cheaper than allowing you to have babies. We would look at China. In China, you get a coupon to have one baby. If you have more than that, you're penalized. Our government goes around a different way. They're giving us incentives not to have more babies because it's cheaper. Who's to say pretty soon they might say, well, you know, when we get elderly, it's a lot more expensive to take care of our elderly people who might have cancer or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or something else. It would be a lot cheaper to let them end their life if they chose to. Why don't we make that a law and support that? And we'd say, oh my gosh, no, that would never happen in this country. Ask your grandparents if they ever thought same-sex unions would be condoned in this country. We have to be the voice. And if we are the voice, I guarantee you, we will be a voice that is persecuted. Some have the attitude that ignorance is bliss. As long as I don't know, it won't hurt me. That's no longer enough anymore. Jesus says, I came to light a fire and would that it were already kindled. We must be the ones to kindle that.